You remember Rachel, the one allegedly in the middle of the Solange elevator beatdown. You know who Rachel is. Well, you didn't know this.
She was blamed for the Solange elevator fight, dragged as Becky with the good hair, and nearly cancelled by the internet. But what if I told you Rachel Roy actually turned the scandal into her biggest win? Let's set the record straight. No matter what gossip has circled over the years, Rachel Roy played her cards with patience and precision and came out ahead. Even when the internet turned her into a target during the infamous Becky with the good hair storm, she held tight to what mattered: her brand, her name, and her influence in fashion. From the moment she partnered with Dame Dash, Rachel understood strategy. She persuaded him to bankroll her fashion ambitions, and when his fortune started crumbling, she quietly stepped aside. Critics have long accused her of using him, yet the backlash never slowed her down. Even as her own lifestyle slipped and her brand wavered, she pivoted quickly. Whenever one opportunity closed, she was already reaching for the next, and whispers suggest that path eventually led her toward Jay-Z. In Rachel's world, survival meant moving with intent, even when the world called it scandal. Rachel's true entry into the spotlight came through Dame Dash. But her connections had been weaving long before his name. Before Dame, she was married to NBA player Yin Kader, though their marriage ended before his death in 2004. Soon after, she crossed paths with Dame, and by the mid-2000s they were married. Though their union unraveled by 2009. To outsiders, their relationship seemed less like romance and more like a carefully calculated alignment. And here's where the story twists back: in the golden days of Rockefeller Records, Dame and Jay-Z were inseparable, sharing not just business ventures but, according to rumor, women as well. And the name often whispered in those circles: Rachel Roy, allegedly. She was already in their orbit before committing to Dame. That dynamic shifted drastically when Dame met Aaliyah. He was consumed by his love for her, and Rachel faded into the background. But fate or timing brought her back into focus. After Aaliyah's untimely passing, Rachel was waiting in the wings, and soon Dame returned to her side. Their marriage raised eyebrows from the start. To outsiders, the pairing seemed mismatched, even awkward. Many who saw them together noticed an undeniable lack of chemistry, as though they were playing parts in a script that never quite fit. Dame Dash, known for his fiery, impulsive nature and take-no-prisoners attitude, hardly seemed like the type to mesh with Rachel, who carried herself with calm precision and careful calculation. People often wondered how she tolerated his temper and unpredictable outbursts, but the truth lay in Rachel's long game. She wasn't looking for an easy relationship. She was building a career. For years before Dame, Rachel had been grinding in the shadows of the fashion industry, paying her dues as an intern, assisting on projects, and trying to carve her way into a notoriously unforgiving field. Talent alone rarely guarantees success in fashion. You can sketch the most brilliant designs, but without access to the right rooms, the right investors, and the right endorsements, your work will stay invisible. Rachel knew this better than anyone. She had style, vision, and determination, but what she lacked was the key to unlock the gatekeepers. Enter Dame Dash. By the early 2000s, Dame wasn't just a music mogul, he was dabbling in lifestyle branding, fashion, and business ventures that extended beyond the recording studio. Rocawear state property, and even his involvement with designers and tastemakers gave him influence in circles Rachel desperately needed. To her, Dame represented opportunity, access, and a chance to move from the shadows into the spotlight. To him, Rachel offered sophistication, artistry, and the sheen of legitimacy in an industry he wanted to break into more seriously. Together, they looked like a power couple on the rise, each giving the other what they couldn't obtain alone. Once they tied the knot, Rachel's career trajectory took off like a rocket. Almost overnight, she went from relative obscurity to a designer whose work caught the eyes of some of the most influential women in the world. Her clothes weren't just stylish, they embodied a mix of elegance and wearability that appealed to women across different industries. Suddenly, her pieces were draped on Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Kate Hudson, Jennifer Garner, Eva Mendes, Kim Kardashian, and Iman. That kind of client list doesn't happen by accident. It was a sign that Rachel had entered the elite fashion conversation, the kind of recognition that takes most designers decades to achieve. But while Rachel's name was climbing, Dame's world was starting to wobble. His empire, once a shining example of black excellence and entrepreneurial grit, was showing cracks that no amount of bravado could hide. At his peak, Dame embodied the image of a larger-than-life mogul. He flaunted wealth and ambition, snapping up properties across the globe: Tribeca lofts, London townhouses, sprawling New Jersey mansions, and Beverly Hills villas. He surrounded himself with luxury, from cars to clothes to the endless parties that reflected his appetite for excess. On the surface, it looked like he had mastered the art of reinvention, moving seamlessly from music to fashion to film. But behind the glossy exterior was a man burning through cash faster than he could replace it. Investments poured into risky ventures that rarely paid off. His vision for Rockefeller's future was grand, but the execution was shaky. And as tensions with Jay-Z and other business partners grew, the foundation of his empire began to crumble. The problem wasn't ambition. Dame had plenty of that. It was discipline. Where Jay-Z played the long game, careful and calculated, Dame often chased ideas with reckless speed, throwing money at projects without ensuring their stability. By the mid-2000s, the consequences of that recklessness became impossible to ignore. Lawsuits piled up. Former associates distanced themselves. Business ventures that once looked promising collapsed one by one. The lavish properties that had once symbolized his success became heavy burdens under the weight of unpaid mortgages and mounting debts. The very lifestyle he had used to project invincibility was now evidence of his downfall. Ask Dame, and he'll tell you he lost it all in pursuit of his dreams, that his failures were noble sacrifices in the name of innovation and independence. And in some ways, there's truth to that. Dame has always framed himself as the disruptor, the visionary, unafraid to buck tradition and challenge the status quo. He was the man who refused to let major labels dictate Rockefeller's future. The man who believed in artists and creatives before others saw their worth. But even the boldest visionaries must balance risk with sustainability, and Dame's unwillingness to do so left him exposed. From the outside, the story looked much simpler. To observers, Dame wasn't a misunderstood genius. He was a man who had everything and squandered it. He had built an empire from nothing, an empire that represented possibility and power, only to spend it faster than it could grow. To Rachel, watching from the inside, the writing on the wall must have been clear. Her star was rising, and his was fading. Where she had leveraged their union to open doors, he was closing them with his volatility and financial chaos. Staying tied to him too long would mean being pulled under by the same wave that was drowning him. And so, while Dame's empire collapsed in real time, Rachel continued her steady climb. Observers might have questioned her loyalty or speculated about her motives, but for Rachel, the decision was survival. Fashion is brutal. Brands fold overnight. Designers are forgotten in a blink, and relevance must be fought for constantly. She understood that her best chance at longevity required distance from Dame's unraveling legacy. It wasn't personal, it was practical. Looking back, their marriage was less a love story and more a case study in ambition and strategy. Rachel played her role with precision, securing the visibility and access she needed, while Dame played his with chaos, eventually undermining the very foundation he had built. Together, they created a moment that propelled Rachel into the upper echelons of fashion. But once that moment had passed, their trajectories diverged, hers upward, his downward. In the end, their story is a reminder of how differently two people can navigate power. Dame tried to dominate with flash and bravado, often burning bridges as quickly as he built them. Rachel, in contrast, moved quietly but deliberately, using every connection and opportunity to craft her own empire. While his legacy became tangled in bankruptcy filings and bitter feuds, hers remained intact, polished, and forward-facing. And that contrasts the rise of Rachel Roy against the fall of Dame Dash's as much about ambition, survival, and the unforgiving nature of fame as it does about their marriage.
Love to do the things Dame did. Fly private for 5 years straight. Buy 2 mansions in London. You got a mansion in London just for your niggas, and then a personal mansion in London for something else, or renting them or whatever. You just got mansions in London. We not even from London. We just going to fucking London, hanging out, not saying, I put on my artists, or really, more Jim and Jewels, but we was all Dipset, SAS, just out in London spending money. I would love to have 2 lofts in Tribeca right around the corner for each other. 20,000 for this loft, 20,000 for that loft around the corner. So you got $40,000.
Rachel didn't waste energy mourning Dame Dash's collapse. Instead, she added to his troubles by filing for divorce without even asking for spousal support. To her, Dame was sinking fast, weighed down by lawsuits and financial chaos, and she wasn't about to let him pull her down to. Rachel had a brand to protect, and clinging to him would have been dead weight. So she walked away clean, no strings attached. But karma has a way of circling back. Soon after, Rachel's own empire started cracking. By 2013, her majority stakeholder, the Jones Group, claimed they had lost millions on her line and announced plans to sell off her trademarks for $15 million. For Rachel, it was a nightmare. She fought tooth and nail, taking them to court to block the sale, and managed to reach a settlement. Still, the bigger problem loomed. She didn't have the funds to buy her company back. What she needed was a lifeline, someone with resources and reach. Allegedly, that lifeline came in the form of Jay-Z. Their ties supposedly stretched back before Rachel even became a fashion name, which only made the speculation that followed more explosive. Rumors of Jay-Z's infidelity had circulated for years, whispered in industry corners and hinted at in gossip columns, but they remained just that, rumors. For a long time, fans brushed them off as tabloid noise, the kind of chatter that inevitably surrounds any celebrity marriage. After all, Jay-Z and Beyoncé had cultivated an image of perfection, the power couple who embodied success, wealth, love, and artistry at the highest level. They weren't just a relationship, they were a brand. So, when whispers of cheating surfaced, many dismissed them as attempts to tear down Black excellence at its peak. But everything changed in May 2014. Inside an elevator at the Standard Hotel in New York City, what was supposed to be just another glamorous evening at the Met Gala turned into one of the most infamous moments in pop culture history. Security footage leaked, showing Beyoncé's younger sister, Solange, physically attacking Jay-Z while Beyoncé stood by, composed but silent. The video, grainy yet explosive, immediately went viral. People dissected every second of the clip: Solange's fury, Beyoncé's stoicism, Jay-Z's defensive body language. What could cause such an outburst in a family known for its control over their public image? The consensus formed quickly: this wasn't about business, this was personal. And in the court of public opinion, it was about infidelity. The elevator incident cracked the facade of the perfect Carter marriage. And into that crack poured years of speculation. Fans began revisiting old interviews, lyrics, and public moments, stitching together a narrative of betrayal. For 2 years, the world buzzed with theories but never received confirmation until Beyoncé herself delivered it in the most Beyoncé way possible, through art. In April 2016, Beyoncé released Lemonade, a visual album that wasn't just music but a manifesto, bold, vulnerable, and unapologetically Black and feminine. It chronicled a journey of rage, grief, reconciliation, and empowerment. The album was deeply personal, yet universally resonant, blending themes of generational trauma, race, identity, and, at its most intimate core, betrayal in her marriage. One lyric in particular seared itself into pop culture memory: "He only want me when I'm not there. He better call Becky with the good hair." With that single line, Beyoncé didn't just confirm the cheating rumors, she detonated them. Suddenly, Becky with the good hair became a cultural phenomenon. Who was Becky? Was she real? A composite character? A metaphor for systemic issues of desirability and colorism? Or was she a specific woman who had dared to come between the most revered couple in music? The Bayhive, Beyoncé's famously loyal fanbase, mobilized like detectives on a mission. Social media turned into a forensic lab, every Instagram caption and paparazzi photo picked apart for clues. It didn't take long for attention to land on Rachel Roy. She wasn't just connected to Jay-Z through the industry. She had long been rumored to have history with both him and Dame Dash. In the fever pitch of speculation, her name resurfaced as a potential candidate for Becky. Then, in what many considered either bold defiance or reckless miscalculation, Rachel Roy fanned the flames herself. On the very night Lemonade premiered, she posted a selfie with the caption, "Good hair don't care, but we will take good lighting for selfies or self-truths. Always live in the light. Hashtag no drama queens." To outsiders, it might have seemed like a harmless, cheeky caption, but in the context of the cultural inferno Beyoncé had just ignited, it read like a provocation. Wink at the rumors, a self-aware nod that she was indeed Becky. That single line was the spark that set off an inferno. Within hours, the Bayhive descended on Rachel's social media, an unstoppable digital swarm. Her Instagram and Twitter were flooded with bee emojis, a signature weapon of Beyoncé's fans. Thousands of comments poured in, accusing her of disrespect, betrayal, and arrogance. The fury didn't stop there. Trolls hacked into her Wikipedia page, editing it with insults and conspiracy theories. For a moment, Rachel Roy went from fashion designer to public enemy number one. Her name trending worldwide, not for her work but for her alleged role in one of the most infamous marital scandals in modern celebrity culture. The intensity of the backlash was almost unprecedented. Social media, already a volatile space, became a battlefield. Supporters of Rachel argued that the Hive's attack was disproportionate and cruel. A digital witch hunt fueled by misogyny and the policing of women's bodies. Critics, however, argued that Rachel had asked for it by inserting herself into the narrative with her provocative post. Regardless of where one stood, the reality was undeniable. Rachel was at the center of one of the biggest cultural storms of the decade. What made the situation even more complex was the symbolism embedded in the phrase "good hair." Within the Black community, good hair is loaded with history, tied to colorism, Eurocentric beauty standards, and systemic issues of desirability. Beyoncé's lyric wasn't just about infidelity, it was about the politics of beauty and worth, about how women are pitted against each other through deeply rooted structures of oppression. By aligning herself with good hair in her caption, Rachel inadvertently stepped into a minefield of cultural pain points. What might have been intended as a playful or defiant remark was instead read as tone-deaf at best, and malicious at worst. For Rachel, the fallout was brutal but oddly short-lived. While her social media was overwhelmed for weeks, and while the internet briefly cast her as a villain, the scandal didn't destroy her career. Fashion is an industry that thrives on reinvention and controversy, and Rachel managed to weather the storm. Her brand remained intact, her designs continued to find buyers, and eventually, the Beehive redirected its energy toward other battles. But the impact of that moment lingered. It served as a case study in the power of celebrity fandom, the volatility of social media, and the way women often bear the brunt of blame in stories of male infidelity. Jay-Z was the one accused of betrayal, yet Rachel became the lightning rod for public anger. Beyoncé, in her genius, never confirmed nor denied who Becky was, leaving the mystery unsolved and the conversation open-ended. That ambiguity only amplified Rachel's role in the narrative, whether she wanted it or not. In hindsight, the scandal is remembered less as a stain on Rachel Roy's career and more as part of the larger cultural moment that Lemonade represented. The album forced conversations about love, betrayal, race, and resilience into the mainstream in a way no celebrity gossip could have achieved alone. Rachel's role, though controversial, became a footnote in a much larger story about art, womanhood, and survival. For Rachel, the lesson was clear. In a world where celebrity culture, fandom, and identity politics collide, even a single Instagram caption can alter the trajectory of your public life. For Beyoncé, it was another demonstration of her power, the ability to turn personal pain into cultural revolution. And for Jay-Z, it was a reminder that his mistakes would never exist in silence. But here's the twist: she survived it. While most thought her career was doomed, Rachel walked away almost untouched. Her brand recovered, her name stayed relevant, and eventually the frenzy faded. In time, when people revisited the story of Jay-Z's alleged infidelity, her name wasn't at the center anymore. That was Rachel's real win. She endured the storm, kept her brand alive, and slipped out of the scandal with less damage than anyone expected. And let's be honest, without that messy chapter, we might never have gotten Lemonade, one of the most groundbreaking albums of our time. Which leaves one lingering question: if Rachel Roy truly was Becky with the good hair, was the drama ever really about her? Or was she just another piece in the decades-long tension between Jay-Z and Dame Dash?